Across different corners of the world, a chilling pattern has emerged. Sons and daughters turning on those who gave them life. What could drive a child to commit the unthinkable? Murdering their own parents. In each of the following cases, we delve into families shattered by violence at the hands of their offspring. These stories span continents and cultures, yet eerily mirror one another in themes of lies, crushing expectations, double lives, and the desperate lengths taken to escape perceived shame or control.
Why would they leave you alone? Why would they not do the same to you? You can't answer that question?
The only thing I can say is he said I cooperated.
You've lied to your parents, right? About going to school. Who's to say this whole thing isn't a lie? Because if you are lying, it's the most cold-blooded thing that I have ever faced in my life.
In this video, we'd examine 5 notorious cases of parricide, analyze what dark psychology underpins these crimes, and what do they reveal about the generational rifts and heavy expectations that may fuel such tragedies.
Listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth. Okay. Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay, and we know the reason why.
In a peaceful Georgia home on February 20th, 2025, Sarah Grace Patrick dialed 911 in apparent hysteria. The 17-year-old claimed to have discovered a nightmare. Her mother and stepfather shot dead in bed, found by Sarah's 6-year-old sister moments earlier. Sarah's frantic emergency call portrayed her as a shocked survivor, a daughter who stumbled upon a tragedy and sought help. But as investigators would soon discover, nothing about the scene or Sarah's behavior was as it seemed. Sarah's family dynamic had appeared loving yet ordinary. There was no obvious history of abuse or instability, which is why the double murder initially baffled the community. Who could have executed the sleeping couple with point-blank gunshots in their own bedroom? Sarah's own 911 call and grief-stricken demeanor positioned her as a victim too, and for a time, sympathy flowed her way. She even delivered a tearful eulogy at her parents' memorial service 2 weeks later.
Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people.
Sarah turned to TikTok in the days after the killings, posting a series of dramatic videos. Yet as investigators quietly gathered evidence behind the scenes, doubts about Sarah's role began to surface. The crime scene itself raised questions. If this had been a home invasion or robbery, why were valuables untouched? In July 2025, nearly 5 months after the murders, the facade crumbled. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office announced Sarah Grace Patrick's arrest.
Today, we can confirm that an arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather. While the case has not remained in the public spotlight in recent months, the investigation has never gone silent.
The motive remained murky. Even as Sarah was charged as an adult, police said they were still searching for why a child would do this. In the months after the murders, Sarah had lived a bizarre double life, playing the traumatized victim online while allegedly hiding a killer's secret in real life. This profound disconnect between her TikTok tears and the horror she's accused of concealing left the public and psychologists grasping for answers. How could a teen compartmentalize guilt so coldly, posting tributes one moment and partying with friends the next, as if nothing had happened? The case of Sarah Grace Patrick forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that a murderer can wear the mask of a mourning daughter, and do it so well that even those closest to her are fooled. Menhaz Zaman was known to his online friends as a jokester, a sometimes abrasive but familiar presence in a small gaming community. At 23 years old, he spent countless hours immersed in Perfect World Void, an online role-playing game, forging bonds with fellow players across the globe. To them, he was simply Menhaz, a friendly Canadian gamer who chatted daily about life, school, and his love of video games. He told them he was attending university and had a bright future ahead. But behind the screen, Menhaz was living a colossal lie, one that would spiral into one of the most horrific family massacres in recent memory. In real life, Menhaz was the only son of a hardworking immigrant family in Markham, Ontario. His parents had moved from Bangladesh to Canada in hopes of a better life. They labored tirelessly and expected the same diligence from Menhaz. They dreamed their son would become an engineer. Indeed, by 2019, they believed he was about to graduate from a local university with an engineering degree. His 21-year-old sister, Malaysa, was an accomplished student. To outsiders, the Zaman household was a picture of sacrifice and aspiration. Immigrant parents who had done everything for their children's success, and a son who appeared to be fulfilling their Canadian dream. But Menhaz's reality was far darker. Unknown to his family, he had dropped out of college years earlier after failing classes. Unable to face the shame or wrath of disappointing his parents, he constructed an elaborate facade. Day after day, he left home pretending to attend classes, but instead he loitered at malls or cyber cafes. He spent endless hours gaming, seeking solace in virtual accomplishments, while his academic record in the real world lay in ruins. With each passing semester, Menhaz dug himself deeper, forging transcripts and lying about his progress. By the summer of 2019, he was living a double life built on a foundation of deceit. To his parents, he was a model student nearly done with university. To himself, he was a failure trapped by his own lies. On July 27, 2019, the day before his fake graduation, Menhaz put his unthinkable plan into action. Over the course of about 9 hours, he systematically slaughtered his entire family. It is believed he first killed his mother, attacking her when she was unsuspecting at home. Then he ambushed his grandmother and sister, one by one, eliminating any witnesses. Finally, Menhaz waited for his father. When he returned home from work, Menhaz greeted him and then killed him too. The method was brutal. Autopsies later revealed he struck each victim in the head, likely with a crowbar or similar object, and then cut their throats to ensure they died. He went back to his computer. Amid the carnage, he logged onto Discord, the chat platform where his gamer friends congregated, and confessed in real time. "I just slaughtered my entire family and will most likely spend the rest of my life in jail if I manage to survive." Some replied in disbelief. Menhaz then sent photos. Those who opened them saw images of bodies lying in pools of blood. To their everlasting credit, the gamers acted. Strangers to each other beyond screen names, they banded together to track down Menhaz's real identity and location. They scrubbed what little personal info they had. Through remarkable teamwork, hunting IP addresses, recalling clues Menhaz had dropped over the years, they deduced he was in Markham, Ontario, Canada, and managed to pinpoint an address. 18 frantic hours later, on July 28, 2019, police in Markham received an urgent tip and performed a wellness check at the Zaman home. There, officers found the gruesome scene exactly as the online witnesses described. The bodies of Malaysa, Monaruz, Momtaz, and Feroza were discovered inside. Menhaz himself answered the door calmly and was arrested on the spot.
This is a horrifying case. Global News has learned the accused, who lived here in this house behind me with his family, had allegedly been plotting to kill them for years. And while none of the neighbors tell me they saw anything wrong here, members of an online gaming community tell Global News that the 23-year-old suspected mass killer allegedly confessed right after his crimes.
In court documents, he expressed a twisted remorse, reiterating that he didn't want his parents to feel the shame of his failures. He pleaded guilty to all 4 murders in September 2020, accepting a life sentence with no chance of parole for 40 years. Psychologically, Menhaz Zaman's case is a study in inverted guilt and perverse logic. Rather than confront his own shortcomings, he chose to erase the very people whose respect he feared losing. In his mind, it was as if killing them was a twisted way to save face. Could the cultural emphasis on family honor and success have compounded his fear? His family's immigrant story of struggle and aspiration might have made his failure to thrive feel like an unforgivable sin in his own eyes. We also see the role of internet isolation. Menhaz spent so much time in an online fantasy world that real-life consequences may have felt abstract. Even his confession came first via pixels and chat boxes, not to any person in the flesh. On July 7, 2021, a clean-cut 23-year-old Wisconsin man named Chandler Halderson walked into the Dane County Sheriff's Office and reported something disturbing. His parents were missing. Chandler calmly told officers that his father and mother had left the previous weekend for the family's cabin up north with another couple and never returned. To the police and the community, Chandler initially appeared to be a devoted son in distress, anxious to find his beloved mom and dad.
They were picked up by their friends, who I never got the name of. And I assumed it was someone I was aware of. The close neighbors of theirs up the street, or their best friends down on the east side. So that's what I assumed. I never really asked any further.
Officials are still searching for this couple, Bart and Krista Halderson. Now, there are a lot of questions about the Dane County couple's disappearance that we are working to get some answers to, but tonight, police aren't saying much.
And Chandler Halderson says for his parents to leave, even with another person, does happen from time to time. But he tells me another family member went to that cabin to check out cell service and was able to get through.
A search of the remote cabin found it undisturbed. No recent human presence at all. Red flags were fluttering everywhere. A neighbor's security camera was reviewed and showed no cars leaving the Halderson home at the time Chandler claimed. And then there was Chandler's own behavior. One neighbor reported seeing him on July 5th, 2 days before he reported them missing, backing his car up near a wooded area by their property, an odd action he hadn't mentioned to police. By July 8th, those suspicions solidified into a horrifying discovery. Acting on the neighbor's tip, deputies searched that wooded area, a farm property about 20 miles from the Halderson home belonging to the family of Chandler's girlfriend. Hidden in the underbrush, investigators found what appeared to be human remains. It was a torso, mutilated, missing head and limbs, but unmistakably human. Nearby, in a blackened oil drum, they found a bloody saw blade, scissors, and bolt cutter stained with flesh. Forensic testing soon confirmed the remains belonged to Bart Halderson. The mild-mannered father had been shot and dismembered, his body partly burned and butchered. The police immediately brought Chandler in for questioning, by now strongly suspecting the missing persons report was a calculated ruse. Under gentle but persistent interrogation, Chandler's facade of cooperation began to crack.
Is there a warrant for my house?
Should there be?
No, I'm just wondering if... Can we go in?
As far as I know, they were at your house and they were going to be there talking to you to ask if you would come up here and talk to us.
But Officer Haley just like walked pretty much in to the gate, the gate on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of walked in. I was wondering if...
Was that when you were getting your wallet?
No, we were I was in the car waiting to leave. I was just wondering if everything's okay, because she said something's happened.
Okay.
And we need to go down.
All right. We'll find out what that's about.
Well, has anything bad happened?
Oh, not sure.
So, I think it's time we start talking about what happened to your parents. Like the truthful version.
Okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So, we have like 20 pages of writing. We're going to start with a clean white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth.
Okay. What?
Because listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth.
Okay.
Okay. Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay, and we know the reason why. Okay, you need to tell the truth.
There's
Listen, you need to tell the truth about what happened and just tell us why it happened. Okay? If something happened, if you were defending yourself or if you just got fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth. Okay? This is your chance to tell us why. Okay? I'm not BSing you. Okay? So can we do that?
Okay, they're okay.
The revelations that followed painted Chandler as a pathological liar whose entire life was a house of cards, one that came crashing down when his parents learned the truth. For years, Chandler had spun an intricate tapestry of deceit. He told everyone he was working on an IT degree at Madison College, poised to graduate. He boasted of a fantastic internship at an insurance company and even claimed he'd landed an upcoming job with SpaceX in Florida, planning to move to the Sunshine State with his girlfriend, Catherine. His parents were proud of what seemed like a motivated, successful son. It turned out Chandler had dropped out of college after barely a semester. He was never on track to graduate at all. There was no SpaceX job, no real internship. To cover these lies, Chandler went to astonishing lengths. He created fake email accounts, impersonating college officials, sending his father messages about transcript delays and issues, so Bart wouldn't call the school. But Bart Halderson, an accountant by profession and a stickler for details, grew suspicious when no diploma arrived and no evidence of school could be produced. In July 2021, Bart tried a clever test. He called Madison College, pretending to be Chandler, to request his son's transcripts.
Hi, I'm trying to get an appointment scheduled to meet with somebody to mainly just get a copy of the transcript and also a printed copy of a certificate that was earned and other degree verification.
Okay, what's your first name?
Chandler, Chandler. Last name is Hald, D as in David, Erson. Yeah.
I don't see that you earned the certificate. There were no you were taking IT classes, right? I don't see that you were in a program.
Well, prior to the IT, there was a solar program too.
Yeah, but I don't see that you were Chandler Emerson. The account I'm looking at, there was no
How far back does that account go that you're looking at? Like when was the first class taken?
Okay, back in 18, spring of 2018.
Oh, okay. So that does have all the history then.
Yeah, but I don't see that you were admitted.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
So I don't see that you were admitted in any program.
Bart confronted Chandler at home, likely informing him of the scheduled meeting that would expose everything. Rather than face the consequences, Chandler had already prepared a violent solution. Using a high-powered rifle his friend had recently given him, Chandler shot his father in the back as Bart sat down in their living room, killing him. Shortly after, when Krista returned home from work around midday, Chandler ambushed and murdered his mother as well. How exactly he killed her is unclear, but given the evidence of bullet casings and blood, it's believed he shot her too. What followed was a frenzied attempt to erase the evidence. Like a scene from a horror film, Chandler set about dismembering his parents' corpses in the family home's basement. Investigators later found blood spatter and a spent shell casing in the basement, along with signs of extensive cleaning. He tried to burn parts of them in the home's fireplace, even as summer July heat raged outside. In fact, traces of human bone and flesh would be found in that fireplace, suggesting he attempted to incinerate some remains. Whatever wouldn't burn, he packed into bags. On July 5th, he drove to his girlfriend's family farm under the pretense of swimming in their pool, and under cover of a friendly visit, dumped Bart's torso and tools in the woods there. He likely scattered Krista's remains on a separate trip to the Wisconsin River area a couple of days later, as indicated by his Snapchat location ping and the later recovery of her legs. Chandler took the stand in his own defense, a rare and risky move. and tried to keep lying. He claimed, bizarrely, that an unknown man killed his parents and threatened him, a story no one found credible. The jury saw through him in a heartbeat. On January 20th, 2022, Chandler Halderson was found guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and lying to authorities. He showed little emotion as the verdict was read. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, effectively ensuring he will die behind bars.
I want to take this opportunity to state my intent to appeal my convictions. If there are any lawyers listening and willing to take on my appeal, take a moment to please reach out to me. It's not that I do not have feelings. It's that I was warned to not show them due to the scrutiny of this case.
Psychologically, Chandler's case is a classic tale of narcissism and desperation born from deceit. He wasn't facing abuse or violence at home. By all accounts, Bart and Krista were loving parents who gave him a good life. But Chandler developed a pattern of chronic lying, perhaps out of laziness, perhaps fear of disappointing them, or a bit of both. Chandler's meticulous staging of the aftermath also reveals an eerie cold-bloodedness. He had the presence of mind to manipulate phones, lie to police with a straight face, and monitor the investigation, which indicates that he understood exactly what he was doing. On a humid spring day in March 2013, Hong Kong made international headlines for a crime so grotesque it sounded like urban legend. Henry Chau Hoi leung, a 29-year-old local man, was arrested and accused of murdering his elderly parents. That alone was horrifying, but what truly curdled the public's blood were the details. After killing them, Henry and an accomplice dismembered the bodies, salted and cooked parts of the flesh with spices, and stored remains in lunchboxes in the refrigerator. This case, quickly dubbed the House of Horrors by the media, forced even seasoned detectives to pause and catch their breath. How did a mild-mannered accounting clerk's son transform into a killer who literally treated his parents like cuts of meat? The answer lies in a decade-long downward spiral of failure, entitlement, and bitterness. Henry Chau grew up as the youngest of 2 brothers in a traditional working-class Hong Kong family. His parents, Glory and Moon, were not rich, but poured their resources into their children. They paid for private school and piano lessons for Henry, believing in the value of education and discipline. From early on, though, Henry was bitter under their strict expectations. In school, he struggled academically and socially. Determined not to give up on him, his parents funded a second chance abroad. They sent Henry to Australia around 2002 to study actuarial science. But abroad, Henry's luck didn't improve. He encountered racism and bullying. Henry dropped out by 2003 at age 20, returning to Hong Kong with no degree and a bruised ego. Here is where Henry's psyche began festering. He lied to his parents about his failure in Australia, at least initially. When they inevitably found out, they were disappointed, but still tried to get him on track, enrolling him in a local school or finding vocational opportunities. But Henry never held a steady job. He bounced between short-lived employment and long stretches of idleness. By his late 20s, Henry was living at home, jobless, divorced from reality, and deeply resenting his parents for every perceived slight. In his mind, they were to blame for his misfortunes. They pressured him too much. They didn't understand him. They nagged him about contributing to the family. By early 2013, Henry had a diabolical plan formulating. He believed that if his parents were gone, he could be reborn, free of their judgment, and able to start fresh. He even started referring to himself as a psychopath and talked to a few acquaintances, almost bragging about fantasies of killing people. One of those acquaintances was Angus Se Chun Kei, a 35-year-old man with troubles of his own. Angus was a family friend with an intellectual disability. He had attempted suicide multiple times, suffered some brain damage, and was described as simple-minded and easily influenced. On March 1st, 2013, Henry set his plan in motion. With cold calculation, he lured his parents to Angus's apartment in the Tai Kok Tsui neighborhood, under the pretense that he had rented a new flat and wanted to show them. Ever hopeful and supportive, Glory and Moon went to see what they might have thought was a sign their son was finally becoming independent. Instead, the moment they stepped into the living room, Henry and Angus attacked. What transpired next is almost beyond comprehension. Henry left, literally stepped away from the carnage, while Angus stayed in the apartment with the bodies. Over the next few days, Angus proceeded, under Henry's instruction presumably, to chop the bodies into pieces with saws and knives. They salted the flesh to stave off odor and decomposition. He resorted to cooking the flesh. Yes, Angus seasoned and roasted pieces of Henry's parents to make them look like char siu pork, presumably to allow for easier disposal or to mask the scent as just cooking to any neighbors. They packed microwaved human meat into lunchboxes and kept them in the fridge like leftovers. On March 6th, he casually filed a missing persons report for his parents, claiming they hadn't been seen since March 2nd. He told police and his older brother a convenient story. Mom and Dad had mentioned going to mainland China for a trip and then vanished. However, Henry made a critical slip. During a routine police interview on March 14th, while officers left him alone momentarily, Henry pulled out his phone and texted a WhatsApp group of friends, confessing to the murders, perhaps thinking those friends would keep his confidence. Instead, one of them smartly contacted the police. Within a day, investigators swarmed Angus's tiny apartment. What they found was out of a nightmare: refrigerators full of body parts, plastic containers of cooked flesh, and bloodstains in the kitchen. In Henry's warped psyche, his parents were shackles holding him back. Killing them wasn't just eliminating a nuisance. It was a form of self-actualization, a rebirth. He blamed them for everything. His father for being loud and overbearing, his mother for forcing piano, and allegedly embarrassing him once in front of a girl. This was no heat-of-the-moment crime. It was premeditated and part of a grandiose delusion Henry had nurtured. The trial was closely watched in Hong Kong. Henry's defense tried to claim he had mental disorders, bipolar and OCD, and was not fully responsible. Indeed, psychiatrists noted he'd had suicidal ideation and extreme stress from failure in life. But the prosecution easily countered that Henry had meticulously planned the murder for months and manipulated others. Clear signs he knew exactly what he was doing. They pointed out his high IQ of 126 versus Angus's 84, suggesting Henry used his intellect to frame Angus as the butcher while claiming he only did the killing part. In March 2015, after a harrowing trial, a jury found Henry Chau guilty of double murder, and notably acquitted Angus of murder, accepting that he was an accessory with diminished capacity. Henry Chau's case is a portrait of entitlement and blame turned lethal. Unlike Menhaz or Chandler, Henry wasn't simply lying to cover failures. He openly failed and then sulked in his failure for years, expecting his parents to still support him. When they understandably became frustrated and urged him to improve, he translated their love and concern as persecution. At its core, the Henry Chau story is about unfulfilled expectations, curdling into violent hatred. Every failure of his own he laid at their feet. Where most people might feel shame or attempt to do better, Henry felt attacked and sought vengeance. The pathology here overlaps with the other cases. A child who cannot cope with not meeting expectations and who externalizes blame to a deadly degree. But Henry's case adds an element of psychopathic cruelty and elaborate cover-up that is uniquely horrifying. In the quiet Toronto suburb of Markham on a November night in 2010, a frantic 911 call came through from a young woman named Jennifer Pan. She screamed that her home had been invaded by armed robbers. Moments later, as police raced to the scene, a chilling real-life drama unfolded. Jennifer's father, Han Pan, staggered out of the house, bleeding from his face and shoulder, screaming for help. Inside, her mother, Bikha Pan, lay lifeless, shot execution style in the back of the head. Jennifer herself was found with her hands loosely tied behind her by shoelaces, seemingly a victim who miraculously survived the slaughter. It had all the makings of a nightmare burglary turned violent. But as the dust settled, detectives sensed something was very wrong with the puzzle pieces. They seemed to fit too neatly. This was the beginning of a case that would reveal one of the most elaborate webs of lies and a motive so startling in its coldness. Jennifer Pan had orchestrated a hit on her own parents. To understand why, we must rewind and look at the Pan family dynamics. Han and Big Ha Pan were refugees from Vietnam who arrived in Canada in the early 1980s. Through unrelenting hard work at an auto parts manufacturer, they built a modest, happy life. They were frugal and disciplined, saving enough to buy a comfortable home and set aside money for their 2 children's education. Like many immigrant parents, they placed immense value on academic success and a strong work ethic. Jennifer, born in 1986, was their older child, their golden daughter, as friends said. She played piano, figure skated, and brought home report cards filled with A's. Han and Bick weren't abusive, but they were undeniably strict. Jennifer was not allowed to date, attend parties, or deviate from the plan of top grades and eventual career success. Curfews were early, and there was an expectation that she live at home until marriage. Some would call it classic tiger parenting, emphasizing discipline and achievement at the expense of social life. For a while, Jennifer played the role flawlessly. She made the honor roll, won scholarships, and by senior year of high school, she was, according to her parents, set to attend the prestigious University of Toronto on a full scholarship for pharmacology. Han and Bick brimmed with pride over their obedient, accomplished daughter. But behind Jennifer's sweet smile was a mountain of lies. In truth, Jennifer had failed calculus in 12th grade and never officially graduated high school. That early acceptance to college? Forged. The straight A's on her report cards? Carefully altered. Jennifer had become an expert forger, creating fake transcripts, award letters, and eventually a phony university diploma to keep her parents fooled. Why go to such lengths? Partly because Jennifer feared her parents' disappointment to an extreme degree, but also because she was living a double life. She didn't want to give up. Back in high school, Jennifer had fallen in love with Daniel Wong, a boy her parents would never approve of. He was of mixed Chinese-Filipino descent and involved in petty drug dealing. Under her parents' restrictions, Jennifer couldn't openly date, so the relationship was furtive from the start. Lying became second nature as she carved out moments to see Daniel. The fake university narrative conveniently allowed her to move about more freely. She claimed to live part-time with a friend near campus, when in fact she was often sleeping over at Daniel's. Jennifer's house of cards collapsed in the summer of 2010. Her mother grew suspicious, and one morning, Bick followed Jennifer when she left for work, only to watch her meet up with Daniel instead. The jig was up. In a dramatic confrontation, Jennifer finally confessed some of the truth. She hadn't actually graduated university, hadn't been working at the lab, and had been living with Daniel part-time. Han was furious. Some reports say he wanted to throw Jennifer out, but Bick pleaded that they give her another chance. They ultimately did, but under severe new conditions. Jennifer, 24 years old by then, was effectively grounded indefinitely. They took away her phone and laptop for a while, only returning them under watch. She had to cut off contact with Daniel Wong. And critically, they demanded she actually go back and finish high school, and then legitimately attend college. Jennifer felt trapped and desperate. She was cut off from her social life, her romantic life, and saw no light at the end of the tunnel. To her, there seemed to be only 2 ways out: run away or remove her parents from the equation. Jennifer began to plot the murder of Han and Bick Pan. She reached out to Daniel and his friend Lenford Crawford. In the shady underworld of small-time drug dealers and hustlers, Jennifer found willing co-conspirators. Crawford introduced 2 associates, David Milvaganam and Eric Carty.
Suddenly, I just heard my mom calling for my dad to come down, and that's when I lowered the volume on my TV, and I could hear the voices weren't any voices I was very familiar with. And so I was scared, and I couldn't move. I just sat in my room for a while. And then I thought I heard them all leave the top floor, and I peered out of my bedroom door. And a guy was there, and he came at me and had string in his hands and tied my arms back and said, "I have a gun behind your back. Do what I say. If you do what I say, then no one will get hurt. Where is the money? Show me where your money is." My mom kept trying to get up, and they kept telling her, "Sit down." And so I didn't want her to get hurt, so I told her, "Mom, sit down." They were trying to find her wallet, but her English isn't good, so she kept saying first. They kept pushing her down onto the chair.
Okay.
As per the agreement, they took the parents down to the basement. Bick was shot 3 times in the back of the head, killing her instantly. Han was shot twice, in the shoulder and face, and collapsed, critically wounded, but miraculously still alive. Thinking both were dead, the hitmen fled. Jennifer, hearing her father's agonized groans and realizing he might not be dead, sprang into action, but not to help him. Instead, she performed her pre-planned part, dialing 911 and crying for help, feigning that she was tied up. This was not how Jennifer expected it to go. She expected both parents dead and herself to be the tragic sole survivor of a home invasion. Instead, her mother was dead, but her father was somehow alive and now being rushed to a hospital. For a brief while, she stuck to her story, but almost immediately, shrewd detectives noticed inconsistencies and oddities.
You're now bound to the railing. Can you show me, can you stand up and turn around and tell me, just show on the camera, how your hands are bound and how you are against the railing? You don't have to sit down, I just need to see how you work.
Just tell me.
Take it out of a traumatizing event, which it is, and put yourself into a more clinical position, because I want to see how you could physically get your phone out of your waistband. We're obviously going to need to know that. It's very important. Just stand up, focus in on how you did it. So just take your sweater off. Stand up and turn around. Put this in the side that you believe it was in. Great. Turn around so that you're looking away from me. You're looking exactly like, now here is where the banister is. Put your hands back behind your back, exactly how you remember they were. Okay? Now, are you restrained from movement? How far can you move your hands from the banister?
They tied my upper arm.
Yes?
Around the banister.
Yes?
But my hands were bound together.
So your hands bound together, and this is the arm that's the strings wrapped around against the banister?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now how can you get to the phone? And how do you make the phone call? 911?
Mm-hmm.
And do you talk down like that?
Yes, I'm yelling at the phone like this.
And how can you hear?
I turned the volume on max.
Yes? So that's exactly the way that you're talking to her against the railing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good enough. Sit down. So you're telling me that you had no involvement in what happened. Meaning not saying how the outcome came, but you had no involvement in any type of illegal activity that would have drawn you or the attention of you to have bad people come to your house looking for large sums of money. You're not involved in this any which way. Because the question obviously stands, Jennifer, is you're upstairs and they're downstairs. So it's a natural concern why would they leave you alone? Why would they not do the same to you? You can't answer that question?
The only thing I can say is he said I cooperated. But I asked him to take me.
The number one guy said you cooperated. And again, we're back to the fact that you admittedly lied. Okay, not to me, right? Not to me.
No.
You admittedly lied. You've lied to your parents, right? About going to school. Who's to say this whole thing isn't a lie? That what you're telling me is a lie? Lying, it's the most cold-blooded thing that I have ever faced in my life.
On November 22nd, 2010, after gently confronting her with inconsistencies for hours, a detective revealed that Han was alive and telling a different story. Cornered, Jennifer cracked, But interestingly, she didn't fully confess. Instead, in a bid for sympathy, she spun a new tale. Yes, she had arranged the hit, she admitted, but not on her parents, on herself. As we reflect on these cases, an unsettling common threads emerge. Each case revolved around a young person who felt cornered by their own lies or their parents' expectations, to the point they viewed murder as the only escape. These were not impulsive crimes of passion. They were calculated acts, often brewing over months or years of family tension. In all 5, the parents wanted the best for their kids: success, education, stability. Yet somehow that pressure, whether externally applied or internalized, became a deadly catalyst. Psychologically, one can trace a pattern of narcissistic injury in these perpetrators. They each constructed false selves to gain approval or avoid wrath. When those false selves were threatened with exposure, they chose to destroy the witnesses, their parents, rather than face humiliation or failure. This speaks to a tragic communication failure in these families, a lack of open channels for admitting mistakes or seeking help. These children did not believe they could say, "I'm struggling," or "I don't want the life you want for me," without losing love or respect. Whether that belief was accurate or a skewed perception, it sealed their fates and their parents. Ultimately, the psychology of kids who killed their parents is a dark study in extremes. These were not impoverished youths driven by necessity, nor psychopathic children abused from birth. They were, in appearance, ordinary middle-class sons and daughters with loving families. And that is what makes their stories all the more chilling. We are left with one overarching question: could these tragedies have been prevented? And each forces us to peer into a mirror of our modern values. Achievement at what cost? Appearance over authenticity? Self over family? These cases ask questions that we as a society must dare to answer, so more children don't follow in their deadly footsteps. Thanks for watching.